Chapter 1. Learning English was never easy for me. I struggled with words, pronunciations, and even basic phrases. Sitting in a classroom full of confident speakers, I always felt out of place. My vocabulary was limited, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't remember new words. It was frustrating, especially because I knew that vocabulary was the foundation of any language. Without it, forming sentences or holding a conversation felt impossible. One day, I came across an article online that changed my perspective. The title was bold: Expand Your Vocabulary in 30 Days. I was skeptical but intrigued. The article spoke about creating a personalized strategy to learn words efficiently, emphasizing consistency over complexity. For the first time, I felt a spark of hope. I realized my approach had been all wrong. I wasn't consistent. I needed a plan, not just random attempts to memorize words. That night, I sat down and mapped out my 30-day journey. I was determined to learn 1,000 words in a month, no matter what it took. The first step was setting a clear goal. Learning 1,000 words seemed daunting, but breaking it down made it manageable. I divided the words into 30 days, which meant I needed to learn about 34 words daily. It still felt overwhelming, but I reminded myself that consistency was key. I would focus on quality, not quantity, ensuring I truly understood and retained each word. Next, I chose my resources carefully. I started with a dictionary app, but I quickly realized it wasn't enough. I needed something engaging. That's when I found flashcards. I downloaded a flashcard app and created decks for different categories: daily life, travel, work, and emotions. Each deck had images and example sentences, which made learning much more enjoyable. Instead of staring at a list of words, I was now interacting with visuals and real-life contexts. To make things even more effective, I incorporated audio. I downloaded podcasts and audiobooks, focusing on topics I loved like cooking and travel. Whenever I heard a new word, I paused and looked it up. I repeated it out loud, mimicking the speaker's pronunciation. This not only helped me learn new words but also improved my speaking skills. The real breakthrough came when I started using the words I learned in sentences. Every morning, I picked 5 words from my flashcards and wrote a short story using them. At first, it felt awkward, but as days went by, my stories became more detailed. I wasn't just memorizing words. I was weaving them into my thoughts and expressions. This practice turned passive learning into active engagement, making the words stick. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were days when I felt overwhelmed. The sheer number of words seemed impossible to conquer, and I doubted myself constantly. On those days, I reminded myself why I started. I thought about the conversations I wanted to have, the books I wanted to read, and the places I wanted to visit. My motivation kept me going, even when the process felt exhausting. One surprising technique that worked wonders was word association. Instead of memorizing a word in isolation, I linked it to something familiar. For example, the word serene reminded me of a calm lake I visited as a child. Every time I thought of that lake, the word serene popped into my mind. This simple trick made learning feel less like studying and more like storytelling. By the end of the first week, I noticed a difference. Words that once felt foreign now felt familiar. I could recall them without effort, and I even started recognizing them in podcasts and books. It was a small victory, but it fueled my confidence. For the first time, I felt like I was making real progress. As the days went by, I refined my strategy. I set aside specific times for vocabulary practice. 15 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes during lunch, and 20 minutes before bed. This routine kept me consistent, and it fit seamlessly into my daily life. I also rewarded myself for milestones. After learning 100 words, I treated myself to a movie. These small rewards made the process more enjoyable and kept me motivated. Looking back, the first week was the foundation of my journey. It wasn't just about learning words, it was about changing my mindset. I realized that consistency, creativity, and determination were more important than any single technique. With a solid routine in place, I was ready to tackle the next 3 weeks and reach my goal of 1,000 words. But the best part was yet to come. Chapter 2. The second week of my journey to learning 1,000 words brought its own set of challenges. While the initial excitement from the first week kept me motivated, the reality of maintaining consistency began to set in. Life didn't pause for my goal and distractions were everywhere. But it was in this period of struggle that I discovered techniques to overcome these challenges and stay on track. One of the biggest obstacles was time management. My days were already packed with work and personal commitments, and carving out extra time for vocabulary practice felt impossible. To tackle this, I integrated learning into my daily activities. For example, during my morning commute, I listened to podcasts. Instead of scrolling through social media during breaks, I flipped through my flashcard app. Even while cooking, I would practice saying new words aloud, describing ingredients or steps in English. By making learning a seamless part of my routine, I no longer felt like I was squeezing it into an already packed schedule. Another challenge was boredom. Repeating the same routines every day made the process feel monotonous at times. To keep things fresh, I experimented with different techniques. One day I played vocabulary games online. Another day I watched YouTube videos that explained new words with animations or stories. These variations kept my interest alive and helped me absorb information in diverse ways. One of the most effective tools I discovered during this phase was the spaced repetition system. This method focused on reviewing words at specific intervals to ensure they moved from short-term to long-term memory. My flashcard app incorporated this system, and it became a game changer. Words I struggled with would appear more frequently, while those I had mastered appeared less often. This adaptive learning process helped me focus on my weaknesses and reinforced my strengths. Additionally, I learned the power of visualization. For instance, when learning the word resilient, I imagined a tree bending in the wind but never breaking. Visualizing such vivid images not only helped me remember the words but also made the learning process more engaging. I started associating every new word with a mental picture or a scenario, transforming abstract concepts into tangible memories. A critical moment during this week was realizing the importance of accountability. Initially, I kept my goal to myself, fearing judgment or failure. But as motivation wavered, I decided to share my journey with a close friend. This small step made a big difference. My friend began checking in on my progress and even quizzed me on my new vocabulary during our conversations. Knowing someone else was invested in my success gave me an added push to stay consistent. It was also around this time that I faced my first real setback. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, I skipped my study session entirely. The next day, I felt a pang of guilt and worried I was falling behind. But instead of letting one missed session derail my progress, I reminded myself of the bigger picture. I doubled my efforts the following day, reviewing both the previous day's words and the new ones. This experience taught me that setbacks were inevitable but didn't have to define the outcome. What mattered was resilience and the ability to get back on track. Another strategy one adopted was grouping words by themes. Instead of learning random vocabulary, I focused on related words. For instance, one day I would study words about emotions, euphoric, melancholy, anxious. While another day I'd tackle travel-related vocabulary, itinerary, journey, expedition. Grouping words this way helped me create mental connections, making them easier to recall. By the end of the second week, my efforts started to pay off in unexpected ways. During a casual conversation with a colleague, I found myself using words I had recently learned. Hearing myself say, "The ambience of this cafe is quite serene," surprised even me. It was proof that the words were becoming part of my active vocabulary, not just something stored away for a quiz. Another victory came during my reading sessions. Previously, I'd often skip over unfamiliar words, but now I paused to identify and understand them. Each time I recognized a word I had recently learned, it felt like uncovering a hidden treasure. These small moments of progress reinforced my belief in the system I had created. To further solidify my learning, I began incorporating writing into my routine. At the end of each day, I wrote a short paragraph using at least 10 new words I had learned. It could be about anything: an imaginary story, a description of my day, or even a reflection on my thoughts. Writing forced me to engage with the words on a deeper level, ensuring I not only remembered them but also knew how to use them correctly in context. As the second week ended, I realized how far I had come. What once felt like an impossible goal was now a manageable, even enjoyable process. The key lessons from this phase were clear: adapt your methods to fit your life, stay accountable, and don't fear setbacks. Most importantly, I learned to celebrate small wins. Each new word added to my vocabulary wasn't just a step toward my goal. It was a step toward becoming a more confident and articulate version of myself. The journey was far from over, but with these strategies in place, I was ready to face the challenges ahead and continue expanding my vocabulary. Chapter 3. The final stretch of my 30-day challenge to learn 1,000 words was both exhilarating and exhausting. By this point, I had built a strong routine and felt a significant boost in my vocabulary. But the journey wasn't without its challenges. As the days ticked closer to the deadline, I realized that the finish line wasn't just about hitting the number. It was about ensuring those 1,000 words became a meaningful part of my everyday English. One of the first lessons I learned during this phase was the importance of active recall. It's easy to feel like you know a word when you see it on a flashcard, but true mastery comes from being able to recall it without prompts. To practice this, I started creating my own mini-quizzes. Each evening, I would write down 20 random words I had learned over the past weeks and challenge myself to define them and use them in sentences. This exercise helped me identify gaps in my memory and reinforced my understanding of each word. Another breakthrough came when I started engaging in conversations with native speakers. I joined an online language exchange platform where I could practice with people from around the world. At first, I was hesitant, worried about making mistakes or forgetting words mid-sentence. But to my surprise, the people I spoke with were patient and encouraging. They even taught me slang and colloquial phrases that weren't part of my original list. These interactions brought my vocabulary to life, transforming static words into dynamic tools for communication. To make the most of these conversations, I kept a notebook by my side. Whenever I struggled to express myself or learned a new word, I jotted it down. After the conversation, I reviewed my notes and added any new vocabulary to my flashcard app. This practice not only expanded my word bank but also gave me confidence in using my newly learned words in real-time scenarios. As I approached the final week, I decided to test my progress in a more formal way. I picked up an intermediate-level English book that I had struggled with months earlier. To my delight, I could now understand most of the sentences without reaching for a dictionary. Words that had once seemed alien now felt like old friends. It was a tangible reminder of how far I had come, and it motivated me to push through the last few days with renewed energy. One of the most rewarding moments came during a casual conversation with a colleague. We were discussing a work project, and I effortlessly used several words I had recently learned, like expedite, reiterate, and alternative. The flow of the conversation felt natural, and for the first time I didn't feel self-conscious about my English. When my colleague complimented me on my vocabulary, it was the validation I didn't know I needed. However, the final days weren't without their challenges. With so many words already learned, my brain started feeling saturated. I worried that I was cramming too much information and that some of it might slip away. To counter this, I focused on reviewing rather than learning new words. I revisited my earlier flashcards, reread my notes, and repeated the quizzes I had created. This shift in focus allowed me to solidify my knowledge and ensure that the words I had learned stayed with me. By the end of the 30 days, I had not only reached my goal of 1,000 words but also gained a deeper understanding of how to make vocabulary learning effective and enjoyable. The journey taught me that language isn't just about memorizing words, it's about using them, connecting with others, and expanding your world. Here are the key takeaways from my experience. 1. Consistency is key. Small, daily efforts add up to significant progress. Even 5 minutes a day can make a difference if you stay committed. 2. Active engagement matters. Writing, speaking, and using words in context are far more effective than passive memorization. Turn your learning into an interactive experience. 3. Don't fear mistakes. Every mistake is an opportunity to learn. Embrace them as part of the process and keep moving forward. 4. Use multiple resources. Combine flashcards, audio, conversations, and reading materials to diversify your learning and keep it interesting. 5. Celebrate small wins. Acknowledge your progress, whether it's recognizing a word in a book or using it in a conversation. These moments fuel your motivation. As I closed my notebook on the final day, I felt a mix of pride and gratitude. What started as a daunting challenge had turned into a transformative journey. I didn't just learn 1,000 words. I learned how to learn, how to persevere, and how to believe in my own potential. To anyone reading this who wants to expand their vocabulary or tackle any language goal, my advice is simple. Start small, stay consistent, and trust the process. The rewards are worth every effort. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If this story inspired you, please like, comment, and subscribe for more tips and strategies to help you master English. Remember, every word you learn is a step toward confidence and connection. You've got this.